whole lot to unwrap there, isn't there? Throughout the next week, through these next 7 days, each prayer service, our Maundy Thursday service, our Good Friday service, we're going to unwrap this a little bit each day. So come join us. But today I want to focus on one aspect of that scripture. But as we get started, please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here today to hear your word being read, to sing our hymns, to share in the story of Jesus Christ. And as we prepare on this Palm Sunday for the events that are going to take place over the next week, we ask you to be with us, and to open us up, and to let your word and your message soak into our hearts so that we can be more Christ-like. For today, Lord, I ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. For my message today, I wanted to focus on the one part of our scripture that we read today where Jesus went before Pilate. You know, I doubt that it ever occurred to you to feel sorry for Pilate. It never occurred to me until I read this text again. The story of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. And it's natural to feel sorry for Jesus, for the thieves who were crucified along with him. But it isn't easy to feel sorry for Pilate, is it? I'm hesitant to say anything nice about Pilate, or to even suggest that we should feel sorry for him. Because Pilate was the man in charge, the one who held the power of life and death in his hands. He was the one who could have saved Jesus. But Pilate was one of the villains, not one of the victims. But when I read this Passion story again this year, I was impressed with the fact that Pilate was trying to do the right thing. You know, when Jesus was brought to him by the Jewish leaders, Pilate conducted a brief interrogation and decided that Jesus had done nothing wrong deserving of death. He told Jesus' accusers, I find no basis for an accusation against this man. In common English, that means, this guy's innocent. Jesus is innocent. But Pilate, for all of his power, he was still a politician. And politicians often find themselves painted into a corner, having to support people they don't like, or having to oppose old friends, or having to vote for projects that they don't agree with in order to support people whose money they need. Now in this case, Pilate found himself painted into a corner. He was squeezed. That's what they call it. They call it squeeze, you know. Have you ever been squeezed or caught between a rock and a hard place? Feeling like you're just getting it from all sides? Happens all the time. Too little money and too much month? That's squeezed. I remember those days. Having to rob Peter to pay Paul? That's squeezed. I remember that. Which bill am I going to pay this month? Needing to meet with an important client and getting a call from the school nurse that your daughter's sick and you have to go pick her up. Been there? That's being squeezed. Being late for an important meeting and making that split-second decision. Do I run that red light or not? You know, we like to imagine that there's people out there who never feel that pressure of being squeezed. Rich people, you know, couples with no kids, or people who own their own business. We like to imagine that we would not feel squeezed if we could just get a diploma, or a specialized education, or get a raise, or get a better job. Some people seem to have it made, don't they? They have a secretary that make their appointments, and an assistant, and a driver. When they come to work in the morning, their secretary hands them their schedule, and their assistant runs over and gets them a cup of coffee. And when it's time to go somewhere, the driver holds the door open for them and drives them wherever they need to go. And they just take care of everything for them. And when they get there, they get out of the car and someone else opens the door and and someone shows them where to sit, wouldn't it be nice? But those people, they're always busy. There's seldom a spare moment when they can just sit back and relax. People line up to talk to them, to push their agenda onto them, to get a decision from them. Everyone wants something from them. They're squeezed too. And that's what happened to Pilate. You know, the Jews were having a festival, and they had all crowded into Jerusalem by the thousands. Pilate, he had beefed up security because, hey, you never know when a crowd might turn ugly. He had taken all the usual precautions, but he hadn't figured on this. He hadn't figured on the Jewish leaders pressing him to kill one of their own. But it made sense if you understood how things worked. Rome reserved the right to impose the death penalty. If Jewish leaders wanted someone executed, they had to get the Romans to do it for them. So they brought Jesus to Pilate. They accused Jesus of treason against Rome. But you know, when Pilate questioned Jesus, he quickly saw something that didn't make sense. Pilate wasn't sure why the Jewish leaders wanted Jesus dead, but he knew that he wanted no part of it. So he declared Jesus innocent. And then he learned that Jesus was from Galilee, so he had his soldiers take him over to Herod. That's one way to get rid of the problem. Send it on to somebody else. That's a good government employee right there, you know? But Herod, he quickly sent Jesus back to Pilate. And there he is again, getting squeezed. So Pilate pronounced Jesus innocent a second time, but offered to have him beaten and released. Maybe that would satisfy the crowds. But they shouted, "Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas!" He's feeling squeezed again, isn't he? So Pilate said once again that Jesus had done nothing wrong, but offered to have him flogged to satisfy the crowd. But they shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" He's feeling the pressure. So Luke, the writer of this gospel, he tells us what happened next. He says, so Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. You know, Pilate clearly didn't want to kill Jesus, but he also didn't want to ride on his hands. Jesus was expendable. If Jesus had to die to keep the peace, that was regrettable, but so be it. What Pilate couldn't know is that this was the most important decision of his life. That he would be judged throughout the rest of history for giving into this crowd. That he would be forever cast as a villain because of this moment. And that his very soul was hanging in this balance. What seemed like not a very important thing turned out to be the only really important thing that Pilate ever did. And that gives me pause. Makes me stop and reflect and think. You know, it makes me wonder about my own life. I do lots of things every day. Dozens of things. Some important, some less. I also leave a lot of things undone. We all do. In his busyness, Pilate missed the significance of the most important moment of his life. And that makes me wonder, what am I missing? Am I also letting the really important things slip through my fingers as I live day by day? Are you letting the really important things slip through your fingers as you live day by day? I came across the story of James Boswell. He was famous as the biographer of Samuel Johnson. Now, Boswell didn't have a particularly happy childhood, but he did have fond memories of the day that his father took him fishing. You may have heard this before. He often told his friends about this day. I mean, it was the highlight of his life. And he would tell everybody about this event and everything he learned from his father on that day that his dad took him fishing. One of Boswell's friends knew that his father had kept a journal, so he snuck into his room and got a hold of that journal. And he managed to read it, and he looked through, and he found the day that was in question, and his dad wrote these words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words, okay? Go on fishing today with my son, a day wasted. But it wasn't wasted, was it? It was perhaps the most important day in his son's life. Some of you will know this name as well. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Anybody ever heard of that name? Kubler-Ross made a name for herself working with people who were dying. She brought great comfort to thousands of people in their last days. But more importantly, she taught others how to give comfort to the dying. You know, we all die. It's going to happen. And some of us are going to die a bit easier because of her work. Kubler-Ross reflected on the things that she learned from dying people, and she passed on this bit of wisdom. She said this: "Not one of them has ever told me how many houses they had, or how many handbags or sable coats they had. What they tell me are the tiny, almost insignificant moments in their life, where they went fishing with a child or mountain climbing trips to Switzerland. Some brief moments in a private, interpersonal relationship. These are the things that keep people going in the end. They remember little moments that they have long forgotten, and they suddenly have a smile on their face. And they begin to reminisce about the little joys that made their whole lives meaningful and worth living." Pilate crucified Jesus because he missed the significance of the most important moment in his life. So I'd like to invite you today to open your eyes and to see your life in a new light. I want to invite you today to try to recognize the really important moments of your life. Those really important moments, the ones that are going to echo through the years. They're not likely to be moments in which you buy a new car or get a new house. They're not likely to be moments in which you reach that sales quota or roll out a new product at work. They are more likely to be a moment when you spend it with your son or your daughter, or a moment when you give a helping hand to that new person at the office, or a moment when you go over and help your neighbor. Those are not only the moments that you are likely to remember most fondly as you grow old, they are also the moments that will make you proud when you look back on your life from heaven. And it is in those moments about which Christ is most likely to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." So friends, let us take care not to miss the significance of the truly important moments of our life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, please join me in a word of prayer.